Have you ever seen a normally calm person completely lose their SHD? What happened? NSFW. I remember having these two friends in 5th grade who at the time I didn't think they'd thought of me as their friend. I'd been bullied up to 4th grade, and moved the summer before 5th grade, and everyone called me annoying and at a distance those 4 years. There was this one day where this one kid was being an asshole for no reason, literally just making fun of people, pushing others, and so on. Well, for some reason, he decided that I was worthy of getting punched, so he came from behind me and somehow hit me in the eye. This was at recess, mind you. Well, when I got back to class, these two tall kids, one girl and one guy, saw I had a bruised eye and had been crying. The moment they got the chance, they came over and asked me in a pissed tone, "Who hurt you?" And I remember thinking something like, "Oh shit, I can't let them know who hurt me, they'll kill him." So they kept asking the entire rest of the week, until I finally told them, and when I did, I felt extremely guilty. These two kids had asked me for help a few times in class, we talked from time to time, and I sometimes let them have part of my lunch that I didn't want but they liked. They were the kind of kids to never have been seen getting even slightly annoyed at anyone ever, so when they kept asking me who hurt me, I felt scared for the guy that hit me, and I was right to be afraid. At recess, the day after I told them who hit me, I saw them drag the guy behind some trees which were behind the playground. No one was supposed to go there, and from there on out, I couldn't see what they did, but before recess ended, the kid, with the two kids who kept asking me about him following behind, apologized, and I could tell he had been crying on the way to me. I told him it was fine, and the two kids let him go. After he left, I asked them why they hurt him. They said because he hurt our friend, and we'll do it again if he tries hitting you again. I did feel like crying after they said that, but held my tears in. For the rest of 5th grade and all of middle school, they hovered around me, and anybody who seemed like they might want to start shit with me got chased away by my two friends. If I could find them again, and express my gratitude to them, I would do it a million times over. They were the very first people to get angry on my behalf, ever, and stick around with me. It takes a lot to make my mom yell. On the rare occasion she did yell, it still felt like she had self-control. Like she yelled on purpose, because there was a reason to yell, like she needed to be that loud for us to hear us, or one of the kids needed to learn to never run into traffic again. But one morning when we were teenagers, my brother was being really difficult. And my very sweet, soft-spoken mother yelled, "Goddamn it, Sean," and threw a butter knife down so hard it stuck, 1/4 inch deep, in oak hardwood floor, against the grain. I can still hear the noise it made. We were all very well behaved for the rest of the day. I did eventually ask my mom why she did that. Her explanation was that she felt she was too angry to hold a knife, even a butter knife, and was trying to get it out of her hand before she did something stupid. I was chilling at a friend's house as a kid. His dad was the chillest, nicest guy. That day, my friend's mom, also super nice, was across the street talking to the neighbor about something that I can no longer recall. Neighbor was one of those guys who never respected common etiquette, music blaring, parking his shitty boat in front of other people's house, cars parked on the lawn. The neighbor started screaming at THR mom, and we all went out on the stoop to see what was happening. As soon as we got outside, the guy called my friend's mom a cunt. Well, my friend's dad heard that and went full Hulk mode. He ran screaming across the street and just fucking decked the guy and crouched over him shouting warnings and threats. Took a while for his wife to calm him down. I don't think any of them had ever seen him react to something in that way, maybe even the dad himself. I worked as a line cook with a chef who I became really good friends with. Really chill dude, easygoing, and actually super fun to cook with. He taught me most of what I know about cooking, and I owe him a lot for my success. Never really saw him get mad until one day, we were getting slammed during busy night and one of the servers said something that really ticked him off. Not sure if I ever heard what it was, but next thing I knew he had sent the deep fryer basket flying at Mach 1 across the kitchen, nearly missing the dish kit and shattering a light bulb. He stormed off, and 5 minutes later, after a smoke break, came back and casually continued cooking as if nothing had happened. He apologized about it the next day and we never talked about it again. The restaurant industry is a stressful place. When I was in my late teens, I was financially irresponsible and borrowed money from my grandparents to move out of my mom's house. We made a plan on how I would pay it back in installments, and I only missed 2 payments. With each one I called my granddad and asked if it was okay. He was always cool about it. One day I got a call from him and he was livid, screaming at me on the phone, and I could hear my grandmother crying in the background. He was the angriest I've ever heard anyone in my life, and I was terrified. He wanted to know why I hadn't made the payment that month, but I was sure I had. It turns out I had accidentally set the automated payment to be drawn from the wrong account and it hadn't done it. It was an honest mistake on my part, and I explained that to him. I transferred the money immediately and he instantly calmed down. I later found out he had become an alcoholic after he quit smoking, and he would talk to my grandmother like that regularly when no one was around. I had a friend who was in his 60s, a functioning alcoholic, but he was the most calm and composed guy I have ever known. He never used to raise his voice or swear. Everything was done with meticulous precision. He once explained to me that if you use vulgar language and shout all the time, then you will have nowhere to go when you really do get angry. I had worked with him for about 3 years, never heard him raise his voice or swear before. The week before he had been shafted on his pay and the manager promised to get it sorted by Friday. Friday rolled around and it had not been sorted. So when my friend walked up to the manager in the open office and declared loudly, "Where the fuck is my money? You promised this would be resolved." The whole office went silent and the look of dread on the manager's face was haunting. The money was in his account by the end of the day. That was him losing his shit. Edit, spelling. This is not my story but my dad's. Growing up, his best friend Leif was a quiet, shy guy that was a bit socially awkward. In school he wasn't physically bullied, but this one kid teased him constantly. This would have been late 50s, early 60s, so kids were expected to just tough it out. My dad would usually confront the kid, but one day a girl runs up to him and says that Leif and the kid are fighting. My dad runs over to save Leif, but when he breaks through the circle he finds the bully flat on his back, Leif sitting on his chest, holding him by the ears and smashing his head into the pavement over and over. My dad tackles him, wrestles him to the ground and screams at him, asking what he's doing. The thing that stayed with me from that story was how he described it. It was like there was nothing in there. I felt like I could see the back of his skull through his eyes. Luckily they were kids, so the damage was serious but limited. The bully escaped with stitches and a concussion and Leif had to talk to the school psychologist. My dad and Leif stayed best friends, and when I met him as an adult he was still quiet but less shy and awkward. My dad is the most mild-mannered person I have ever met. He is the most composed, level-headed man I know. I once saw him trip in our garage and land in a bucket of nails and screws to realize he had one lodged into his kneecap. He looked over at me and said, "Don't tell you mom." She'll overreact, while he grabbed a pair of pliers and yanked out the screw. But when something happened to my special needs brother he would get this sparkle in his eye that could scare a Navy SEAL. When I was 8 years old my parents took my brother and I to eat at a restaurant, which was kind of a big deal because my brother was recently diagnosed with a degenerative physical health issue which was racking up huge medical debts, all while my dad lost his job after getting the bends on a work dive. We went to our favorite Mexican restaurant in town and parked in the handicapped spot nearest the front door. I still remember having an unusually light-hearted time in which I could see my parents' stress level subside and listen to funny stories about the past. We simply enjoyed a memorable dinner with lots of laughter. Looking back I realize this was a big expense that my parents probably couldn't afford and sacrificed so we could have a normal night as a family. When we left the restaurant we found a car parked next to us, not in a parking spot but in the yellow stripes immediately next to our van. Normally this might not be an issue, but my brother is in a wheelchair and we had a folding ramp, not the hydraulic lifts that you see today, but a heavy metal powder-coated ramp. This was a Friday night, so traffic was crazy busy and my parents didn't feel comfortable just backing up into the street to load my brother, so my dad went into the restaurant to see if the manager could find the owner of the car and ask him to move. When my dad emerged from the restaurant I saw a look that I have never seen before. It was one of focus, determination, and rage. He looked at my mom and told her to get in the car. She just hopped in and said "I'm okay" in a way that indicated she knew something might go down. He turned to me and said, "Watch this shit." He unfolded the ramp and slammed it on the roof of the car next to us. Then turned to explain that the manager told him I'm not responsible for what happens in the parking lot. Why don't you just figure something out? So he did. To be clear, there were maybe 4 to 5 groups eating in the restaurant. He could have easily asked someone to move. We waited for a minute and the manager came out yelling, "What are you doing? You can't do that." This was when my dad lost it. At this point he picked up my brother's wheelchair with him in it, which weighed about 150 to 200 pounds, and sat him on the hood of the car while yelling at the manager. He then jumped on the hood of the car and then picked my brother up to put him on the roof of the car, still giving the manager the business. He jumped up to the roof and calmly rolled my brother across the ramp and into our van, told me to get in and calmly told the manager I figured something out. Since that day I have never seen anything remotely close to the same level of anger from him. We laugh about the story from time to time and my dad is always quick to say that he overreacted, but I think he reacted just fine. Update/edit. Wow, Thanks for recognizing my dad for the badass that he is. We do believe that the car in question was the manager's because any customer could have seen what was happening from inside the restaurant, so we don't feel too bad. My dad never had to do this again because he had some incredibly bright orange stickers made that say "you park like an asshole" that he kept on him at all times just in case someone needs to be reminded of what they are by placing it on their driver's side window. Ooh, I have a good one for this. So during my previous, pre-pandemic job, I worked with a really talented, super nice manager named James who was a total professional and very good with customers. He's one of those guys you look at and from sheer physical size you'd think he could easily be a bouncer, but he's just an absolute teddy bear of a human being. Didn't matter what changes came down from the top of the company or how business was going, dude just soldiered on as a beacon of positivity. Never got visibly mad or upset, he was pure Teflon to bad news. But one day I get a call from a janitorial service we contracted with to do a lot of the deeper cleaning at our facility. During this call they asked me to confirm that we have 2-day shifts and 1 overnight shift cleaning our building. I don't know why this came up, exactly, but it was puzzling since we only ever had 1-day cleaning shift and 1 overnight cleaning shift and this had been the case ever since I began working at that particular location, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years by this point. They kept insisting that I must be mistaken and that surely there was a second shift during the day that I was just missing. However, I was the guy who had to regularly review their work and submit this feedback to the contracted company, so I was 100% certain that we only ever had the 1-day shift. Eventually, I put them on hold and informed James of this and like a switch the dude completely changed his attitude. Gone was the James who always had a smile on his face and never let anything get to him. In his place arrived a stone-faced mountain of a man who asked me to let him talk to these people. I give him the phone, he goes into his office, and I watch through the window as he becomes increasingly animated, maybe even to the point of outright yelling, as the truth comes out that we had been being charged for this second daytime janitorial shift that had never actually existed. Was like watching a teddy bear turn into a grizzly in the span of 3 minutes. Dude was able to move past it and return to his normal self after the call. But while he was on it I could tell he was just incensed by the fact we were being billed for services we weren't actually receiving. There was a girl in my grade in high school and she was super quiet and shy. Very often when we were in a group chatting she would be quiet and if you turned to her and asked for her opinion, she would put her hands over her mouth, giggle nervously, and take a few steps back. Her mom was also kind of creepy and would follow her fucking everywhere. The first week of every month she would follow the girl to school and walk around the hallways during class, bored, and then the rest of the month stay outside of school at a cafe or the rec center, waiting for her daughter. When we would hang out, the mom would follow us from a little distance away. There were rumors that she was kidnapped as a child, so that's why they were like that, lol. One day, I saw her and her family at the dollar store, so I started walking over to her to say hi and suddenly, she started screaming at her mother. It looked like her mom asked her to translate the packaging and then didn't believe her translation was right because she was screaming, "Fine, don't believe me then." It scared the shit out of me, lol. It was back in high school. Every time during lunch break I visit my friends in a different section in the same year to hang out. I knew a guy there that was the most chillest dude. He laughs a lot, friendly banner, he cracks a joke here and there, but generally he just prefers to listen in on the conversations. One day I decided to hang out in his class as usual, greeted him with the "hey man." But he just looked at me, took off his student ID lace and gave it to me. Then out of nowhere he tackled one of our classmates. Did I forget to mention that he's a bit of a sizable guy? He started punching the shit out of his classmate and hitting him with everything that he got his hands on. Everyone was screaming while him just holding his student ID dumbfounded. Apparently the classmate he beat up has been harassing him, insulting him and acting as if they were close, which in fact they barely knew each other outside of class. Great guy, Ed the forklift driver. He tried Chantix to quit smoking. We worked in a warehouse with assembly lines packaging refrigerator components under Whirlpool/Maytag contracts. It was a pretty stressful job at times. One day we were packaging an order and we ran out of a shelf due to poor communication, so the assembly line had to stop. Ed absolutely snapped. He took off on his forklift to get the shelves. When he came back with the shelves on his left he drove through the spider area where forklifts aren't allowed, slamming through thousands of components and running his forklift directly into the assembly conveyor belt, destroying the entire operation. Bodies went flying. He threw it in reverse and slammed backward into containers stacked all the way to the ceiling, causing hundreds of metal/glass fridge shelves to come raining down. It was terrifying and he nearly killed 8 of us working on the line. My aunt. For years she was always super calm, always joking and in a good mood. In my 15 years I had never seen her angry at anything, and I had definitely never heard her cuss. Until Christmas 1999. Some backstory: my mom had 2 younger brothers. One, asshole uncle, is a complete dick, and the younger one, good uncle, my aunt in the story's husband, is a pretty average guy and gets along with everyone. For years my grandma enabled my asshole uncle, and despite my grandpa's best efforts he just became more of a dick. Summer of 1999. Asshole uncle and my now ex-aunt are separated with a divorce pending. Her still being nice to her nieces and nephews called my grandma and asked if she could drop off our Christmas gifts, and my grandma said that was fine. She shows up and my uncle is pissed. My grandma told all of us kids, including asshole uncle's daughter, to stay in the family room. My mom comes in and says that asshole uncle tried to punch his wife in the face, and my good uncle pulled him back and they fell through the neighbor's split rail fence. My always super calm aunt stands up and says, "I've fucking had it with his wife beating bullshit, I'm calling the fucking cops. I've fucking had it with this psycho asshole." I'm stunned. Can't believe it. My grandma is in a panic because again, she enabled it, and him going to jail for DV would likely cost him his job. Fire chief. Asshole uncle takes off, and shortly after we all leave. Christmas ended a bit early that year. To this day I've yet to hear my aunt cuss again, and only ever seen her get upset about something, and it was again about my asshole uncle.